We should say something, really, shouldn't we?
We should. Are we live?
I don't know. It's impossible to tell, really, isn't it? If nothing says you're actually live now.
Yeah. Big countdown.
Anyway, just in case we are live, and I suspect we probably are, just in case we are live, hello, everybody, and welcome to SalesTV. I'm sure Andy will be joining us shortly. It's another week, another series of sales problems and truisms in the sales industry that we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah. In the comfort of our virtual lounge.
In the comfort of our virtual lounge. Yeah. A virtual lounge that all of you are very welcome to join.
Yes.
Ah,
good morning.
I'll change the view because we're very dynasty-like, aren't we?
Yeah.
Good morning, Andy.
Good morning. How are you? Dynasty instantly took me back to that joke. I don't know if you saw it, which was Bobby Ewing. Somebody put him up on LinkedIn. And what was it? It's like hyperinflation, wildcat strikes. If I wake up and Bobby Ewing sort of like steps out of the shower, I know I've been in a dream since the 1980s or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, so actually, sometimes you do feel that you've been in a dream since the 1980s, don't you? You know, you and I think LinkedIn is a beautiful metaphor for how some people are still living in a different decade. You know, the outreach that you get from people, because if somebody actually knocks on your door and comes to your door and opens their coat and says, "Do you want to buy a watch, mate?" You know, they get to see your kind of, "Oh God, not you again." But on LinkedIn, you don't have that overhead. So people are sending out these vacuous, pointless messages where clearly they've not done the slightest bit of research and are still living in the 1980s. And it's great for them to be able to do that, isn't it? Even though it clearly doesn't help them towards making their number or indeed making any friends.
I think it's quite funny. I mean, when you change your profile, particularly, and someone said this, when I eventually become actually a doctor, you will see the people that don't put any effort into your point, because you'll get "Dear Doctor" and your LinkedIn outreaches. Yeah. At the moment, I get "Dear Lecturer," and it's like, you go, really? Come on.
Yeah. That would be great, because you'll be able to say, "Trust me, I'm a doctor," won't you?
And the only reason I'm doing it is that I can apparently perform minor invasive surgery without people's permission.
Into their minds. Into
their minds. Yeah.
No, I just mess with people's minds, Alex. It's not. I don't need surgery for that.
So anyway, today we were going to be talking about three things, or as many of the three things as we get round to today. Player manager role in sales. Should sales leaders be actually selling? Does the role still exist? Should they be leading by example? Sales in startups. You know, so often when we think about sales, we think about a structured, established organization that has a sales function. But much of the commercial world is startups these days. So how do startups sell, and how should startups sell? And lastly, is sales speak ignored? Well, obviously, if it is, you're just leaving money on the table. Further to your comment earlier, Alex,
yeah.
You know, salespeople use all of these cliched phrases, and often not initially, but they come out. The truth will out, won't it?
Yes.
Good morning, Ian. So, who wants to kick off, and with which of those? And anyone in the audience who wants to pile in and say that's a load of garbage?
Yeah, come on, join us. I think I'm going to start with, is sales speak ignored? Because and I apologise to the person that shared this idea with me, but it really kind of rung a loud bell in my mind, that, you know, for many years, you know, traditional outbound sales techniques are being ignored, as tailored as you make the email. Oh, startup sales, my bag.
Oh my God.
That's not the Alan Clark, is it?
No. Have you just got an email from Ben Dorks? Ben, I'm so sorry. He was supposed to be on today, wasn't he?
I sent the invite, but I didn't get a response.
I will send him another link to it now. Yes.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Ben,
Let's put the
I'm
brakes
so
on.
sorry, it'll be with you in a second.
It's almost like we didn't plan this.
That's the beauty of it.
Right.
Carry on going whilst our glorious technical admin sorts everything out seamlessly behind the scenes. Carry on, oh bearded sales guy. What were you going to say?
Well, what I was going to say was, as you know, as sales messages start to get ignored and people stop answering the phone, there's this notion of the sales language pouring out of salespeople's mouths, and when that happens, the recipient recognizes that and starts to zone out and ignore salespeople.
And actually, I violently agree with you on that. But bringing it back around to social media, I think it's caused genuinely by a lot of people using language on social that customers and buyers find and then go, it perpetuates I don't trust this. It's about you. It's not about me, to sales speak. So things like how to smash your goal, the top 5 tips, how to crush your target. And you go, God almighty. I mean, you don't see other professions doing that. So we don't help ourselves in perpetuating crap speak.
Yeah.
And so people go, you don't see a doctor going, crushed my doctoral target today. I saw 75 patients, which is 15 over goal. And you go, what?
Yeah.
Really? It's just like...
Yeah, we're laughing, but it's true. So why is that?
Hold on. Yeah, button up T-shirt. There we go.
Is that actually a criticism of our dress code, Mark, or is that?
It's a criticism of your dress code, Andy.
No, I think it's a compliment because I have my top button up.
Did you? I like to try and brush up the chest hairs. Not a lot of it, but I like to get it up there, comb it upwards. Mark, so that answers your question.
That's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Once you become a trusted advisor, I think sales speak is pretty much ignored. I think that's true to a certain extent. Certainly, I think you are inside the circle, aren't you, at the point that you've become the trusted advisor? But I think that's only probably true of smaller businesses. You know, Alex and I have worked in big tech. The sales function is very different from the delivery function. The sales function does win trust and does close deals. What it doesn't do is ever become the trusted advisor, because actually we're not the people that are implementing in that situation.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that in itself is at risk of being one of those terms, overused terms that really has a different meaning to different people. And becoming a true trusted advisor is based on trust and strength of relationship. And do I believe what you're saying? Therefore, am I going to trust, the words that come out of your mouth?
Yeah, but that's the interesting thing, isn't it? It's if you ask people genuinely, how do you get competitive advantage for your company from your salespeople? It's actually through individual brand, the brand of the individual. But there's nothing that there's nothing that's been done yet that actually allows salespeople to project a brand, a personal brand, in the way that other organizations do. Not other organizations, so other professions, vocations do. And that's got to be the tackle. That's got to be the drive forward, because the data says that less and less people trust us, less and less people let us into the buying cycle. The World Wide Web has changed a lot of that. And so we've got to do something that says, actually, why would you want to engage with me? I mean, we've talked about Simon Sinek, sales is like dating, isn't it? 2.5-minute video that is absolutely well worth the view, because he actually looks at how you show up versus how you shouldn't show up in a sales conversation, and exactly like having a date. So, I think the reality then is that if we can get to a point where people want to engage, then you get to be that trusted advisor. Otherwise, you are battling through a lot of barriers to get to the point where you can have that set of honest and open conversations.
Yeah.
And actually be able to say, to win trust by going, this what we've got right now just isn't for you. It's not going to work for you. So yes, we want a relationship for long term, but right now this isn't a deal that you should be doing with us.
I think though the challenge with that is that most salespeople, and we've covered this many times in previous sessions, most salespeople are so far away from their target that those are not words that ever exit their mouths. You know, I'm on the verge of being sacked. I have to sell something.
Yeah.
And as if by magic, we can pose that question to Ben. So,
Good morning, Ben.
Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome to our virtual sales lounge.
Thank you. I do apologise. I didn't seem to have a link. So sorry for my tardy arrival.
It's not your fault.
I'll take responsibility for that. It's my fault, for which I apologise unreservedly.
What was the question?
So do you as a leader, as an interesting, support the concept that actually some of your salespeople should say to customers, this deal isn't for you right now. We've got a long-term relationship we want, but actually the solution you're looking for isn't something that we offer.
Absolutely. We certainly always try and encourage our salespeople to only sell what we've got today. Future promises only ever come back to haunt you. But for lots of reasons. One is it creates, so we talk a lot about expectations exchange with the customers. You want to deliver assured outcomes. As soon as you go into the realms of trying to sell something that's not quite there or a little bit, roadmap-ish, then that becomes a real challenge. That's not to say that if you've got committed roadmaps, you can't sell against the roadmap, but it's always that very big concern of trying to sell something that's just a little bit of an extension of the roadmap. We don't actually allow our salespeople to do that at all. It has to be approved all the way through, mainly to ensure that we don't disappoint customers. Ultimately, as a supplier, you're trying to deliver outcomes for the organisations in which you serve, and especially in the industries which we do. They're highly regulated. There's big impacts about us getting it wrong in terms of financial, reputational, or even loss of life. So we always make sure that we stay within the confines of what we're able to deliver.
Maybe tell us a little bit about you, Ben, to help the audience get a feel for who you are and what you do. Because when you use the word saving life, my ears pricked up.
So for those who don't know me, I'm Ben Dodds. I'm a chief exec of a company called IdeaGen. I started life, as Andy would know, as a salesperson when I was 16 years old. So I started life as a door knocker, selling pens and pencils and stationery to Leicestershire Industrial Estate.
Nice.
Got into IT in my sort of mid 20s. I did reasonably well in enterprise sales. Thought I should start my own business in my early 30s. I sold that to a company called IdeaGen 10 years ago. So in my late 30s, which was a stock market listed business, I became chief exec of IdeaGen in 2017, 2018, and built that up, sold it in a £1 billion plus P2P into HG Capital, and now we're a global business doing regulatory and compliance software for over 12,000 customer organisations, including BA, Emirates, Commerce Bank, 35 of the top 50 life science companies, with over 1,500 colleagues around the world. And we are on an M&A path to become the largest supplier of regulatory and compliance software in the world over the next 2 to 3 years. So we sort of acquire 10 to 12 businesses every year that we bring into the IdeaGen community.
Nice.
What's kept you so long? I mean, you've just twiddling your thumbs, aren't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, so follow that.
Well, what I quite like about this is obviously being marginally late. You were talking about dynasty, and we actually have 2 dynasty heads on this call, Adam, believe it or not. So you've got Ben, who has absolutely made sales a beautiful place, and surprisingly his daughter and family are involved in sales. So I know Jasmine, because she's helping out on the Emerging Professionals Network, which is great. And obviously Alex, who's managed to, anybody he touches goes into sales, particularly all of his family. So it is exactly like dynasty. It's just like, it's brilliant. I'm going to go and wake my son up and make sure he goes into sales now, but
Too kind. I did start in sales, knocking doors, selling Kirby vacuum cleaners, but our paths I didn't quite follow Ben's path all the way.
There's nothing wrong with a good Kirby vacuum cleaner, although why anyone would spend £600 on one 20 years ago, who knows?
yeah, exactly. £1,200 actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was a lot more than that.
I've just got this vision of being a household owner something like 20 odd years ago, and you two turning up and knocking at the door. It's just like you've been banging crooked pieces of wood and nailing it in there. It's just like panic. It's all out.
I can clean the carpet. You can help them write the letters.
Exactly. In my lovely Burton's, olive green polyester suit that I used to wear. It was lovely when it got wet.
I've still got one of those. It's joyous. It's great if you walk briskly in it, you glow. It charges itself up. Anyway, joking aside, back to this question of the long-term relationship. I think that that what both of you, Andy and Ben, have laid out is a utopian view of how sales should be. I personally think the reality of it is very different to that. I think that the majority of salespeople are some distance from their number. I think they are under huge pressure. I think they're being micromanaged. And I think that when they get a sniff of a deal, they will go for that deal with a tenacity which is most offensive to the buyer. And I think that they'll be less interested in the buyer's needs and more interested in their needs. And the idea of saying, actually, I don't think we've got quite the right product for you, so I think you should buy from Alex, and letting a competitor in the door to build a relationship based on delivery and a commercial transaction, I think is a million miles away from the way things are most times. I think what happens is that salespeople, and I've seen this with my own eyes, where salespeople have sold a product which is not very good, which is even inappropriate to the client needs, because it gets a good sales multiplier, and they're going to make more commission on it.
I mean, if I answer, I don't disagree with some of what you've said. I think a lot of that though is company specific and comes from the top of that organization, and a lot of that comes to whether you see sales and marketing as an integral part of your organization, or whether you see it as the stereotype individual who just does it for the money and would leave on the flip of a coin. I think if you invest into your sales and marketing, and we invest a lot into our sales and marketing, we have our own sales academy. 41% of our quota carrying salespeople, we have well over 100 quota carrying salespeople, have come through our academy. Over 50% of our managers have come through our academy. If you actually create an environment where you recognize sales as a profession rather than as a job, then I think to be honest, Adam, a lot of that disappears quite quickly, because
I don't doubt it, and I think that you are not stereotypical of organizations. I think that's my point. you've set out your stall as you want things to be, and people within the organization have fallen into step with your vision for what this should be. Absolutely, it's about relationships. Absolutely, it's about doing the right thing by the customer. And I talk to, I don't know, 10 businesses a week, and very few of them are even on the same playing field as you from this perspective. It's all about numbers for most of them. And part of the challenge here is that they have for so long been doing the wrong things, which have failed to drive revenue. And many of these organizations are on the cusp of going under, and what we hear is we actually can't engage you to help us sell more stuff because we haven't got the revenue to do it, but maybe we will have next year, which I know is one of those ever decreasing circles, isn't it? It's like, what are you going to do differently tomorrow, which is going to give you the money to engage us to help you make more money? You need to make the decision now whilst you're still here. But for a lot of these organizations, they are teetering on the very brink. They're either waiting for their next round of funding, or they're hoping that things will improve. That deal that's been promised, that John in sales has said he's going to be bringing in for the last 6 months, will actually land, and that will bail us out. And I think what we've got is a systemic failure of the sales industry, because people are encouraged to do the wrong behavior, which makes the wrong behavior prevalent, which means that the buyer doesn't engage with salespeople the way they once did, so they don't allow salespeople in to help them often.
So I think obviously this having Ben on the call is costing me a lot of money because I can't reference him as much as I could last week. There's a couple of things on a serious note that I think Ben does, and I'd like your view, Ben, as to how you do this, and is it unconscious or conscious? And there's one thing that you don't do, so I'll cover those things. So, and it's very much linked to my conceptual model that I'm researching, which is, I think, Ben, you create an organizational culture, which is clearly, obviously, something that you take responsibility for, and that organizational culture is very positive. I think you create a very positive and caring, psychologically safe environment. And the thing you don't do, what I see, is that you don't assume that all of the young salespeople and young people in your care have to have an experience that you had when you were their age. You actually do engage and think about these people in the modern context. So to recap, two things: you do great organizational culture, great psychological safety, and you don't make the mistake that I think, Adam, you referenced a lot of people do, which is, I will do what happened to me when I was their age.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How have you taken those? How have you taken those decisions to do that, or is it just natural to you?
I think it's always conscious. And I think to reference a couple of points there. So I think, Adam, it's not salespeople that fail; it's businesses that fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's only in my world of tech that you're either dead or you're growing. You may not recognize you're dead, but once if you stop the momentum and the go-to-market positioning and the sales execution through poor leadership, and often poor leadership, poor product, poor culture, then you're absolutely right. You're on your way down. And a lot of that, I probably speak to 100 organizations a year, because we buy a dozen organizations a year. So just through the natural reverse sales funnel of M&A, then I speak to a lot of organizations. And actually, taking up on your point, Andy, what you see is a lot of old culture. This is the way that we used to do it in PTC in the noughties. So we're going to treat our salespeople like that, and PTC was fantastic. Medic has survived and will survive, my generation and probably the next. My daughter knows Medic today in the same way that I know Medic. So I think there's lots of great things that came out of it, but that very alpha male characteristic culture, the hardest person in the room, the person that spoke the loudest, all of that falls away. Today it's a very different environment. It's actually often the introvert and the quiet voices. And certainly if I look at the balance, the gender balance of our sales team, it's nearly 50-50 between female and male.
Wow.
It's a very different world out there. And we have to recognize that actually how people engage, how they communicate is vastly different. And you can really encourage that. And so, Andy, it's a very conscious behavior that, as a business and as individuals, sales is on an evolution path at the moment that is very, very fast. Buyers are more engaged, buyers are more knowledgeable. Tech is ubiquitous throughout their organizations. We're not selling products anymore. We don't sell a product. I mean, that's pretty old hat. You are selling desired outcomes. You're often even pricing against those outcomes rather than against how many people might use the system on a day-to-day basis. The world is moving very, very quickly, and I think unless you recognise that you need to move with it, you're in real trouble.
Yeah, so 100% agree with you, Ben. I've been lucky enough to work in an organisation in the past where they had a similar mindset, but it really did come from the CEO, and it was co-created with the leadership team. And there was this joined up language, if you like, across all functions within the organization. But to Adam, your point, I think too often, the CEO or the leadership team, senior leadership team are hiring someone in sales and saying, right, go create the sales go-to-market strategy on your own, because you're expected to do that, rather than co-create, the sales strategy as part of the overall go-to-market strategy.
Mm.
And
I think we've got a really interesting comment here from Neil. That there is this split, isn't there, in sales? We've got pressure on the salespeople to make their number, but actually what the client wants is this relaxed guide to take them through the buying journey and to win their trust. And those two kind of are in many ways mutually exclusive, aren't they? You have to be a very good actor when you're under pressure, worrying about whether you're going to get paid this month, to sit in the client's office and say to them, we're fitting in with your timescale. If it's not right at the moment, it's okay.
Yeah, but I was always taught when I started selling that, and I'm making this comment about money because we keep coming back to money and not making goal, is you live to your base salary, and your commission is something that's nice on top of that. So I always saw, and I'm guessing everybody on this call saw, people who put themselves under pressure were actually extending their lifestyle to their entire OTA. And my manager was great. I mean, my first boss, Steve Pugh, was brilliant. He just went, don't do it. You've got a company car, gave me a cheap mortgage, live to your base salary, and therefore you don't need to worry about all of these things. And you do all the right things then. And I don't know whether managers actually do sit down and have those conversations with people anymore, where you've got that base and commission split.
I think the base and commission split percentage has changed quite significantly there. There's lots of research, and for those that like a good sales TV leadership call in the morning, or decide to walk the dog with a McKinsey, it's much closer to a sort of 70-30, 75-25. It'd be a more realistic sort of split between base and commission, rather than the sort of traditional 50-50, even 40-60 in my day that you would have. I would also, if I'm really honest, if I take our top performers, I think I said last week, 20% of your people are above target, and 60% sit within in your mid-range and 20% don't make it. If you take that 20%, they're not coin operated. They're just not. I think commission does drive behavior, but it drives a behavior in terms of what you sell and how you sell it, your sales mix, rather than as a sheer motivator. Your top performers don't sit there and count the pennies on each and every order that they get through the door. I certainly never did, and I'm sure, Andy, you never did as well. You recognise that actually it's about performance. It's about being number one. Top of the leaderboard. A catalyst for change, and all those good things. And just to pick up on another point, Adam, one of the, if I look at the way that businesses are valued today, and I think this goes into, ultimately as chief execs, you're there to create shareholder value. There is a very fundamental shift in the way the market thinks about sales and go to market, especially in the tech world. If you're taking sort of 15 years ago, then tech companies were primarily valued on product. If you had a great product, then build it and they shall come, the great Kevin Costner approach to life. And that was definitely the way that tech companies were valued. If I sort of look at where it is today, it's probably much more of a 50-50 between the go-to-market and the tech. If you've got a really good go-to-market platform, you receive higher multiples, higher valuations than just about having great tech. And if you sort of look moving forward, the reason there is so many, buy and builds, especially within the tech world, but also many other business areas as well, is that actually the shift is much more because of globalization towards the go-to-market will become more valuable, and it will become almost a 75% of the company is valued on the go-to-market and 25% on the tech. So I think what the companies that do best are those that recognize that it's not sales that create a go-to-market strategy. It is the business that works each and every day on a go-to-market strategy, and whether that's pricing or licensing or marketing or product marketing, sales strategy, execution, segmentation, all of that is around go straight to value and is vital for the most successful companies. And I think everybody recognizes that as the businesses continue to evolve and grow, that sales is just a huge important cog, but of a wider go-to-market strategy and execution.
Yeah. So I think it's great what you're saying then, but I think for the audience, there's a fair amount of salespeople listening. So when you're saying go-to-market strategy, do you want to just share a little bit more about what makes that up?
I thought it was a breakfast meeting.
It is.
Just while you're swallowing that, to follow the lovely comment from the lovely Mark McDermott. You can find out more about us. I just changed my name, and Alex just changed his. So you can find us on LinkedIn, where you can find all about us if you just Google those names. Go for it, Ben. Sorry.
Don't Google me. I can't remember what I was on there. So go to market for us includes, and so first and foremost, sales for me is always the most important cog of a go to market operation. Certainly in the worlds that I live in, where the sales team are executing the final piece of a jigsaw. But whereas 20 years ago or 30 years ago, I think salespeople executed most of that. They were in the sale very early. They were often even creating the need for that customer. The customer may not have even recognized that they needed to do something 25, 30 years ago, before the internet, and when you used to have to go to visit a payphone to phone your boss. So you were creating a need. So I think sales was a very, very different environment then. Whereas today, actually, most of your buyers are very well educated before they get there. So when we think about go to market, it's all the way through that. So that includes for us thinking about our thought leadership position, our domain advocacy, the customer community programs that we have that are supporting what we term are the sort of safe hands, trusted voices within those organizations. That's often the head of safety or the head of quality, the head of chief compliance officer type role. There's a lot of work right at the very beginning around your brand recognition, which becomes hugely important as you continue to grow globally. When we think about marketing, we're thinking about everything from the pricing that we're offering in those different areas. That's hugely important, and sales feedback is essential for that, because we have a pricing department, pricing team here that go out into the market. They look at what our competitors doing. They think about, going to your point, Alex, think about how our customers buy, because you're really helping your customers buy in the majority of instances for us. We think about the way that people consume information now is very, very different. So lots of pre-populated videos where they can actually just choose the bits that they want to look at of a pre-sale. So 50% of our pre-sales is done online without any interaction from us. We know that 80% of all of our new accounts visit review websites before buying. So how do we integrate? How do we sort of work effectively with those review websites? How do you get to be outstanding on those review websites? Because only after all of that does it then go to a salesperson. Yeah. Because in reality, if I look at our lead generation, it's almost all incoming today. We use BDRs, SDRs, but it's a vast percentage of that is incoming, i.e. the customer has actually already decided they know that they need something. And that's a very different position for the salespeople, because then, and I think that goes into the point earlier, you are really working hard on that go-to-market, then delivers a really effective sales execution plan, because then it is validating that solution, working with that customer effectively, building the cast of characters in the organization to actually allow the customer to go and buy. Yeah. We know that if our salespeople effectively have a cast of characters of over 5, then it has a higher propensity to close than if they only have 2. And that is because if you've got a good groundswell of opinion within your customer, then it's easier to get it through a procurement route. You go back into your medic, you can create your champion, you've got your paper process. So we think about all of these different mechanics. And that really is how, when we look at go-to-market, is not one part of it. It's all the way through from long-term thought leadership to, actually how do we help our customers buy effectively within their organization. Yeah. Not one thing. It's a lot of things.
And it be completely joined up.
Most of the time.
I guess
it's quite utopia there. It doesn't happen quite like that all the time.
Yeah. But when it does, it's harmonious. So your point earlier about, sales isn't the problem, the business is the problem. I think that's what you said, something along those lines. That's kind of what you're referring to. If all of those parts, as you described, aren't being thought about in a way that is joined up in a coherent manner, it's very difficult to then expect sales to deliver the number.
Yeah, effectively. And I think there's a great comment on here from Dan, which is education is a key tool for a salesperson in today's world. We talk a lot about IQ, EQ, and CQ.
EQ?
Intelligence, emotional intelligence, and then CQ is commercial intelligence.
Got it. Yeah.
And that is your your sort of genuine interest in how business works. And if you're a business to business salesperson, then understanding the target market that you're aiming for, being up to date on the news flow within that market. The great things. The lights have gone off in my office. Thinking all the time about how you can support and educate and challenge the customer, is so important. And those people that think like that and act like that, and that goes right back into, they're the top 20%. It's not about being a coin operated commission salesperson. It's about those people who are evangelical about the market they work in. They want to be a success. They want to educate. They want to deliver a difference, and they invariably are your top salespeople.
But isn't there a and we had somebody else talking about the dichotomy between the short term and the long term sale. So somebody said about Yaya said about this. Saw a post on LinkedIn saying, "Can you sell ice to an Eskimo? If so, we need you." And there's a lot of that belief system that permeates sales, isn't there? The sort of Glengarry Glen Ross boiler room macho. I will nail you to the floor and make you buy something because I'm a salesman. That's my job. And it's very outdated, but still a lot of organizations seem to see this as being something attractive rather than something which is repulsive.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if you said, if that's the kind of question you ask me in the interview, then I don't want to work here.
Yeah.
I mean, Andy, I'm sure your views are very similar on this, is that the sales is changing. The people coming through today just don't think like that. The alpha male characteristics of a sales individual is not what you're looking for. Sales is an environment that is a long way from alpha male characteristics. You're actually really looking for people who are, are natural listeners, who are not trying to lead the room, they're trying to guide a room, and there's a fundamental difference between the two. They're learners. They have to be, they have to be learning something every day. If you're not a learn it all, then sales is probably not the industry for you moving forward. Whereas, as I said, when you're trying to, 30 years ago, when you're trying to teach the individual about the solution because they don't even know they need it, being a bit of a know-it-all was probably a characteristic that was more prevalent. But in today's world, then I fundamentally don't believe that. And organizations that still have that approach, as I said before, Adam, you're either growing or you're dead. You just may not realize you're dead yet, but they're dead.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing. You've created an environment which brings out the very best in sales. You've structured sales in such a way that it's absolutely about putting the customer needs first. And that's really refreshing because it's not the thing that I often see out there. And the fact that you've done it and you're being really successful as an organization that's behaving that way, I think is absolutely comes back to that earlier point about it's the leadership. You're setting that as being the belief system of the business, and people are falling into step behind you and they're being successful as a result of doing that. And many of the organizations that I'm talking to that are massively successful, massive businesses, there are individuals like you within the business, but they're not in a position of power. So they're having to manage the fact that I know that the route to market that I'm being told, my KPIs about my behavior around cold calling, around cold emailing, around going to events, those things are not driving the conversations that lead to sales and the relationships that I need, but I'm still being asked to do that. And despite the fact that no person within the organization that behaves that way is being successful. That's still kind of baked into the DNA of the organization.
It's really, I mean, there isn't an easy answer, because I certainly recognise as formerly being, a sales leader and being a sales manager of 5 people, being an enterprise salesperson of 1, and being a chief revenue officer with 60 or 70, to being a chief exec with 1,500, that I can't make everybody happy all of the time. I will always have, a number of people who disagree with, the strategy or the execution, or how we do it. I think really all you can try and do is, and you raised a point last week, and I was dropping off because I was just getting on a plane to New York. Sounds exotic, it's not. The budgets have to be built from the bottom up and the top down. If you don't do that, then you're in all sorts of trouble. So you've always got to listen to all of the individuals within your organization. You've got to take on board those points, Adam, because there's no point in building a sales target that functionally everybody in your organization disagrees with. If I look at the way that we built our sales budgets, we have a baseline like for like 14% growth within our sales budgets this year. We then will have a number of value creation plans over the top, some of which are sales relevant, i.e. some of the transition stuff that we have on the go, some of which are nothing to do with sales. So that's all about our pricing, bespoke pricing and inflationary pricing that goes into it. So we will look at growth as a holistic approach. The most important bit, though, is, do sales buy into the 14%, like for like growth with all the other, incentives that we have in place? And the answer to that is yes. I mean, when we did it, we were, on a very large company with, hundreds of millions of revenue. We were £600,000 apart, which is definitely in the roundings in my world. And that's a top-down, bottom-up approach, making sure that we listen all the way down to sales manager level is how we build it up. So we build it all the way up from sales manager through to the VPs, through to the SVPs, into the business lines, up into the group budget. So I think it's, and it goes back into it's businesses, successful businesses will listen. That doesn't necessarily mean that the individual's always right, because you just, we can listen and then disagree. But you have to create a culture where the individuals at least feel like they're listening. I just want to answer one other point before. Everything I've said today doesn't mean we don't have a really, a sales culture. We run a quarterly number. 2 weeks left of the quarter, we think we're missing. We will fight and scrap and work, and we will have everybody in the office, and we will be banging the drums and all of the good old-fashioned stuff that I do think works really well. We'll be having stand-ups each and every morning on the forecast. We will be having war rooms. We will. It's still a really good old-fashioned sales culture, because it's a great environment. It's the best days of a quarter is the last 3 or 4 days. The best day of the year is the last day of the financial year. There's nothing better than hitting your number and it's starting at 0 at 12 o'clock. That's the best part of life. We don't ever want to move away from that. I just think there's a great way in which you can treat people, listen to people, educate people, and maintain the best bits about sales, which is the being part of a team, the winning, the achieving, the outcomes, and in my case, buying a Porsche when I was 27 years old with my commission check.
We're at time. So what can I say to sum up? Ben, thank you so much. Your insights and inspirational view of a sales structure within an organization has been a breath of fresh air.
Brilliant.
I think it demonstrates that it can be done. And often I think that that people that are leading organizations or leading sales teams, or even at the coalface salespeople, they need to see that there is a better way than the way that many organizations adopt. And you are proof positive that it is possible to do that. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in the audience. We've had some fantastic questions and loads of questions and comments today. That's been brilliant. I can only assume it's because Ben's here, and therefore people are actually paying attention and listening and finding something of value here, rather than just going and making their cup of tea and eating their sandwich. So Ben, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back again. And until the next time. So if you're in North America, that will be later today. If you're in Europe, that may be later today as well. And if not, next week. So thank you all very much, everybody. Have a great week.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.